How you doing, guys? This is Eric from RuleTheWasteland.com. I've mentioned in quite a few of my videos and our live streams about preparedness, shit the fan prepping, whatever you want to call it, that we're unlikely to get situations where there is no rule of law, luckily, but also in some situations it can be actually worse to have no rule of law. And we're kind of finding ourselves in those situations right now. I mean, if you have zero rule of law, you're in a position where a lot of dangerous, chaotic things can happen, but you're not restrained in your reaction or your chosen response to those things. Whereas a lot of what happens in crappy societal decline type situations, economic collapse, whatever, is you get in a situation where a lot of these dangerous, chaotic things are still happening, but there's also still a lot of laws that are really draconianly applied and frustratingly and dangerously the only ones that are applied are the ones to the law-abiding citizens. Like we're seeing this play out right now in San Francisco and other places where lower level criminals and even mid to violent offenders in a lot of situations are able to run amok without fear of anything happening to them from police. Whereas you're still going to get busted if you don't dot your I's and cross all your T's on some paperwork, or you have some minor traffic violation, or you forget to do something right with your taxes. They're going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. Any self-defense people are just hammered. The legal people trying to or the good citizens trying to defend themselves are just absolutely blasted. We've seen that in like St. Louis, where the people came out on their porch with firearms, obviously in fear for their safety. When you have an entire massive mob of angry protesters on your private property, are any of those people facing charges? No, only the people who came out on their own property with legally owned firearms. They're the ones who had to face charges from the law enforcement officials. So this has been called rule by law instead of rule of law, and it's much, much worse, in my opinion, for capable, self-sufficient people to have to deal with that than to deal with many without rule of law situations, in my opinion. And it certainly is a very frustrating thing and dangerous to have to deal with. And you've even seen memes about that where you have the Venn diagram of apocalypse and regular going to work or something like that, and the overlap right in the middle is where we are right now, which is, like I've said in all my videos, the worst of both worlds. And one scenario to think about is something that recently happened in Philadelphia, which I've seen multiple takes on, obviously from across the spectrum, but two specifically from people who I agree with both sides of the argument, if you want to call it that, or both positions. And I wanted to see what you guys think and explain why both of them kind of can make sense depending on how you view the situation. For those of you who have not heard the story, I'll read the brief article here real quick about what happened in Philadelphia. It says, as a woman was raped, train riders failed to intervene, police say. So we'll say, as a woman, this was yesterday, October 17th, or the day before yesterday, October 17th. As a woman was being raped while on a train near Philadelphia on Wednesday night, riders watched, failed to intervene, and did not call 911, the authorities said. A man who officials identified as Fiston Nagoy sat down next to a woman at about 10 p.m., attempted to touch her a few times. The woman pushed back and tried to stop him from touching her. Then, unfortunately, he proceeded to rip her clothes off. An 8-minute assault, and no passenger in the train car intervened. So obviously there's some strong opinions about this either way. The one thing that I will say, regardless of which side of the discussion you fall on what I'm about to present, the fact that no one called 911 at the very least is completely unforgivable. I mean, you can debate the choice about whether to physically intervene or not, and there's definitely a lot to think about given what I was just talking about. But the decision to not even attempt to report it is unforgivable. So I'll get that out of the way. There's absolutely zero reason. You could do it by text, discreetly if you're worried about this person hearing you on the phone, things like that. There's no reason why you shouldn't at least attempt to report this. Of course, that's not going to do anything. If you're on a moving train and the assault's 8 minutes even, there's no way they can get there. But, you've done something at least. But so complete inaction is always going to be unforgivable. But the argument that has arisen is whether you should physically intervene in some way. So I'll start off by saying that in a unrestricted situation where you have the choice to go out into the world as you see fit every day, I would obviously suggest that anyone who considers himself a decent person, especially a man, put themselves in a position where they're able to do something when I'll say their people are being threatened. Now you can interpret that however you want. I certainly am not talking about race specifically, but you can there's not an automatic argument that you need to endanger yourself for another human being, regardless of the situation. I I recall a situation a long time ago where a woman tried to commit suicide by crashing her car. She was unsuccessful. Someone saw some good Samaritans, if you want to call them that, saw the accident, unaware that it was purposeful. Pulled her out of like this flaming vehicle or something. Ended up getting pretty severe injuries. I've not life-threatening, luckily, but pretty severe burns from pulling her out of this vehicle. And later found out that she was trying to commit suicide and ended up suing her. I don't know what the result of that was, but I certainly don't disagree with their decision to do that. And of course, given that knowledge ahead of time, I would have suggested that they don't intervene at all, put themselves in risk at all. So you have certain situations like that can arise where you don't know what's going on. And there's plenty of other situations you see arise where people may know themselves. It may be estranged lovers, an abusive relationship that this woman's gone back to this guy like half a dozen times. And even though they're getting into a fight, probably even a physically abusive altercation, someone will try to intervene and then they'll both turn on that person, like the woman and if the guy starts losing, the woman will help him to attack the Good Samaritan. So there's all sorts of obnoxious situations you can get in. But what I was originally going to say is that if you're in this unrestricted scenario, I think you should prepare to be able to help your people, whether that's your family, your countrymen, however you want to interpret that, the people that you care about. But the key word of that is if you're able to prepare. So if I'm saying, I think this should be done, you say, okay, I would carry a weapon, I would carry pepper spray, I might, do other self-defense instruments, I might do certain types of vehicles or something like that. But when you're in a situation where the government and the people in that city who have chosen and elected that government specifically prevent you from doing those things, they're not in a position to then say, oh, why didn't you do anything? If you're like, well, I was 100% prepared to intervene to help people, and this is how I would choose to do it, but you say, no, you can't have a weapon, you can't have a knife that's over 2.5-inch blade, and you can't conceal it, you can't have this type of pepper spray over a certain size or whatever, and if you physically intervene, we're going to probably charge you with a crime of some kind, depending on how it goes down. You can't be sure that, just like with the McCloskeys in St. Louis. So they completely hamstring you, threaten you with legal action, depending on what the outcome is. If this is a person of color and it's a white as hell person like me who's intervening, and you end up killing the guy, what happens as a result of that? So they completely hamstring you, and then they're going to come back and say, oh, why didn't you do anything? No, fuck that. And like the one perspective that I was mentioning was Mike Cernovich, who had basically said the same thing as I was saying here. One of his tweets says, why would I as a bystander stop a crime from happening in a liberal city? They voted for this. And no, I'm not risking my freedom and hoping a Soros DA won't look to make some headlines. I avoid liberal areas. They can live in filth, not my problem. For all you saying that you've done something in Philadelphia on that train, good luck when a Soros-funded DA went after you. And he has an article, Soros-backed Philadelphia DA sees homicides hit record areas. So that's obviously what I was referring to. And he said, meanwhile, in the actual world, this is what happens to people who try preventing crimes. And a Nebraska bar owner charged with shooting and killing a protester, and I believe who was attempting to throw bricks at him or Molotov cocktails. I forget the exact situation. But he ended up committing suicide after coming under either assault or murder charges. So you have to take that into situation. And he said, and this is what I was going to mention here in a minute, the only way to stop a truly deranged criminal is with extreme violence. I hate risking it in a liberal city and hoping that, but I was stopping a crime holds up, and I hope you wouldn't either. This is what Democrats voted for, not my place to second guess them. And he quotes Mark Randazza, who's a very well-known civil rights attorney. He says, yep, I'd love to say I would intervene. I probably would. Then, presuming it all went well, I'd be on the front page for a hate crime, and after my practice and my life were in shambles, maybe I'd be able to plea out to disorderly conduct. A jury there would smoke me. Exactly. And you can always make the argument that against it, they voted for this. Well, not everyone voted for this, but certainly if you're in a city like Philadelphia, and depending on the demographic of the person, there's a very good chance, probably 9 out of 10 chance that this person did vote to support all these policies against carrying a weapon, lesser penalties for certain offenders and all this stuff, diversity quotas, whatever, what have you. So there's a very good chance that they did. and put you in that position directly. So, imagine the situation where you see this. You're carrying the only weapon that you probably can. I'm not specifically up to date on Philadelphia's uh, ability to carry concealed weapons and things like that. But let's say all you're able to carry is a knife, like is a small knife, as is frequently in these big cities. You're on the train, you see this physical assault going down, and let's say the guy is, the size of an NFL linebacker, but he's unarmed. And he's just attempting to or has started to rape this woman. All right, do you yell, hey, stop? Okay, then the guy gets up. He's fucking 260 pounds. You've got a little 3-inch blade. Now what? Are you willing to put yourself in that position? So you say, okay, well, this woman is certainly fearing for her life or grievous bodily harm. This guy doesn't see me. Maybe I'll just jump on his back, gut him like a fish. He's instantly dead. Very gruesome, extremely violent act. I would argue that it was morally and legally justifiable. But now you've just gutted this poor minority who was just turning his life around, was unarmed, they could make all sorts of arguments about the altercation between him and this woman, about what was, now you, like Randaz was saying, now you've got a multi-year legal battle where you could be fighting for your, going to life in prison or something like that. So it's definitely a lot to think about. And obviously the other side of the spectrum is we have, a lot of people feel this way, obviously, but I'll throw in a clip from Southern Prepper 1.
The men that were on there that watched it, that videotaped it, shame on you. Cowards. You could at least call someone or text someone and say, hey, call the cops. There's a problem on the train. But no, that wasn't done.
And like I said, I would tend to agree with this situation if you're able to prepare the way you think you should, and it's what I would consider your people. Like with the example of the person trying to commit suicide, I would say, not knowing any situations, if you see someone stuck in a car that has a small fire on it and you think you can get them out before they burn alive, then yeah, I would say that you're probably a shitty person if you don't at least attempt to get them out. But if you'd known that this person had put themselves into that situation willingly, which is basically what all the voting members of these cities have done, would you still risk your entire life, fortune, and everything else on attempting to save them from a situation that they pretty much voluntarily, even if unwittingly, put themselves in? I'm not here to tell you one way or the other. I will say that if I was in a situation like that, I think just based on what I know about my own personality, that I would find it extremely hard not to intervene as violently as possible. But it would probably end very disastrously, or certainly could end very badly for everyone involved. So let me know what you guys think and what you think you might do in a similar situation. And if there's any way you can, obviously, other than getting out of cities where this sort of situation happens regularly, what you think you can do to mitigate that. Obviously, the best solution in my mind is to always make sure you're at maximum physical capabilities, carrying whatever the most you're allowed to in terms of self-defense weapons and whatnot, and be very knowledgeable about the current laws and situations in your area, so that at the very least you can articulate exactly why you felt like you or this other person was in danger, exactly why you felt like that level of force was required. Like I was just explaining, I could very easily coherently explain why I would choose to use deadly force against a massive person, even if they're unarmed. So, but that doesn't always guarantee that it's going to work. Even if you make a completely logical argument that's supported by case law, they could still choose to hammer you, and you could lose everything, even if you eventually get off. So, let me know what you guys think and which side of the aisle you tend to come down on in this situation. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Check out rulethewasteland.com if you want a sick shirt.